Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I'll tell you what, we positively had plenty of ice cream around here from our friends at Taharka. My wife is eating all the key lime pie ice cream. If any of our friends over at Taharka Brothers get my signal, please send more honey Graham. We are completely out of that. I'll tell you what, my pal Bill Cole came to me a couple years ago, really inspired sort of my mayoral thoughts, and you can read all those up at WNST.net as well as at Baltimore Positive, and Don Moeller and I will be talking about that. But Bill Cole from Cole Roofing and Gordian Energy came to me about 2.5 years ago and said, you know, dude, I love your sports stuff, but I want you to start talking about stuff that's bigger than sports and more than sports. And somehow, some way, my antenna reaches out from Nasty Nationwide 20 years ago to all sorts of places. This guy hails from Claremont, Illinois. And I had to look up Claremont, Illinois, and I'm like, where exactly is that? It's sort of just south of 70 on the road between Terre Haute and St. Louis, where I once drove from Indianapolis to St. Louis and back again a couple of years ago, chasing U2 and Pearl Jam around. He is a fascinating story, but he comes to me on a local level as the disability consultant for the Baltimore Orioles and the co-founder of the Beautiful Lives project. He is a broadcaster. He's an inspiration, and you can learn more about him and all that he does out on Twitter at Bryce Weiler, as well as up at the BeautifulLives.org website. We're going to welcome Bryce Weiler in from beautiful Illinois. And first off, we don't have a baseball season right now, so I think we're all lamenting that. And my hair has grown out, Bryce. I have sort of a funny hat and funny hair on right now with my orange Oriole cartoon lid on. But what's a nice guy from Illinois doing with the Orioles over here? How you been?
Thank you so much for having me on, Nestor. I became friends with Baltimore's owner and their president, and they were gracious enough to give me the opportunity to be the disability consultant, which I've had that role since 2016. I've done such intriguing programs as helping Baltimore become the first team in sports to wear braille on their jerseys to honor people who are blind and to show the importance of people who are blind learning how to read braille and how reading braille can open up the entire world to someone who's visually impaired or blind. I've also given fans of all disabilities the opportunity to play on the field with Baltimore's players and coaches before 2 Orioles home games at Camden Yards last season. And furthermore, I have ensured that both Ed Smith Stadium, the Orioles spring training home in Sarasota, as well as Camden Yards, are accessible for fans of all disabilities. So I'm grateful for what Baltimore's staff has given me the opportunity to do, from Greg Bader to everyone else there, and also that they are so willing to help people with all disabilities to live their dreams, because not every baseball team or even sports team in this country wants to do that or take on any role such as that.
Well, Bryce, I'll tell you, I went on the radio in December of 1991 with a guy named Kenny Albert that I'm sure you're familiar with. Kenny was calling skipjack games here and called me into the radio, and I did maybe 3 months with Kenny, and then Kenny went on his way to becoming Kenny Albert. And Kenny and I keep in touch, and we're dear friends. But when I went on the radio in 1992 by myself, and I was creating sort of Nasty Nestor, and the Colts had left Baltimore, the Orioles were about to move into Camden Yards in 1992, and Cal Ripken, and baseball was such an enormous sport here then in 1992, drawing 3 million people to Camden Yards, and there were no Washington Nationals and certainly no world champion Washington Nationals at that time. And being on AM radio, I was on AM 1230, WITH, a station of the stars. Alan Field in the morning and Ken Jackson all afternoon. Rockin' Robin in the afternoons before me. And I'm this wild, crazy, nasty Nestor, 23-year-old guy in 1992, Bryce. And I didn't have listeners. I didn't have fans. I was a writer. I was a newspaper writer and a rock critic. So, I mean, people knew who I was a little bit from music and through being a sports writer and covering hockey. But I didn't have radio listeners. And I was trying to figure out how to do radio. And we didn't have any listeners. I mean, I was just this crazy guy on the radio. Charlie Ekman put me over a little bit, and Rex Barney would come on, and some of my sports writer buddies would come on, and Kenny would book a couple of good guests. His dad sat in or whatever. And one day we invited folks down to this really crappy studio up on the 5th floor at 5 South Light Street. It's now a beautiful condo. They ripped it down. It had a McDonald's, but it was sort of a building that's time had come and gone by 1992. Some homeless folks sort of lived in the alcove of the building at the time. And we went up, and it was this musty old studio left over, probably built in the 50s, hadn't been maintained. Still had the cigarette butts from the 60s there in the 90s, in the ashtrays. It was terrible. And we invited our listeners. We thought this would be a good idea to invite the listeners down to the studio to sit in because it's what the Greaseman did at DC 101. And Bryce, I probably had 15 or 20 listeners come down one night 6 months into my radio career. And I want to say 5 or 6 of the 20 that came in that night were blind. And I guess being a snot-nosed 23-year-old know-it-all, but needed to learn everything, that I didn't realize what a companion radio was, especially in an era of cable television, and the internet wasn't in then, but newspapers and braille readership and braille elevators, and I was always so inspired by seeing blind folks in Highlandtown get on and off of buses. My parents never drove, so there were always blind people coming onto my buses, so I was exposed to that. But from a listener standpoint, these listeners I had who called me, who never identified themselves as blind, showed up. Maurice, one of my favorite callers, showed up at the station. I knew him for 6 months on the radio. And Bryce, I never knew he was blind, until he showed up. And it opened my door to what blind people went through on a daily basis, but what the capabilities of having whatever disability and overcoming. I'm missing a finger that I'm holding up onto the camera. But the National Federation of the Blind, that's located right at the foot of I-95 and 895. There's a road in northeast Baltimore where there's a school for the blind. Everyone in Kearney, Parkville knows about that, and Taylor Avenue. And, so it's not an exposure issue, but it's more of the Orioles giving you an opportunity. Tell me what your role is, because I'm giving you a little background for me, that it was eye-opening to me that so many blind folks listen to me every day, and I was broadcasting for them. But at that time, that John Miller was the eyes and ears of baseball for so many people. And I'm sure that this has been your experience in loving sports the way you do and wanting to be a sportscaster, right?
I grew up listening to games on the radio, listening to St. Louis Cardinals and Chicago Cubs, and I became good friends with both John Rooney and Mike Shannon, who do the St. Louis Cardinals, as well as Pat Hughes, who do the Chicago Cubs. And listening to games on the radio or even news on the radio has been something that's been so important to me, because when I listen to games on television, I cannot understand what is happening because I cannot see the pictures. But listening to games on the radio brings the pictures to life. I'm really thankful for the Sirius XM radio app. I listen to lots of sports games on that, news on that, and then I also listen to things on the TuneIn radio app as well, because both of those apps are quite accessible for the voiceover program that I use on my phone. Some other mainstream apps that stream radio stations, those apps unfortunately are not accessible for my phone. I really don't want to say which ones those are, but I've tried to get the stations who own those apps to make their apps more accessible for 3 or 4 years now, and they've never wanted to do that.
Well, who does a good job for you? I mean, you said SiriusXM. Anything that's audio, audio, I would think the podcast world and the richness of the podcast world and, what I've provided for 30 years, which is hopefully intelligent conversation to either educate, inform, entertain, or all of the above at one point or another. But for you, and give away a little bit. You live in Illinois. I mean, how often do you get to St. Louis for a ball game? Are you Cardinals, you Cubs, and you basketball guy? I mean, who does stuff for blind folks well in sports that you can enjoy it fully?
Teams as a whole do not do cohesive programs for fans of all disabilities. They tend to pick one or two groups, such as people who are blind or people who are in wheelchairs, and they do everything for one or two groups, but they don't do everything for the 7, 8, or 9 groups of people of all disabilities who could be attending their games. So after coming and studying how all the sports teams and the leagues work, I have a different viewpoint on sports teams and my thoughts on owners and front office staff than I did before I started doing my Baltimore consulting work in 2016. And that really gives me a greater understanding and a greater value to what Baltimore staff has given me the opportunity to do every day and every year with their fans, their players and coaches, and their front office members. And I'm just so grateful for that opportunity because it's allowed me to live my dreams, and it's helped people of all disabilities all across Baltimore and all across the country to be able to live their dreams and be able to experience sports as well. And I know from researching other teams and trying to convince other team owners and team presidents to do these types of programs that it always does not seem how it is when a team says why they do or do not want to do programs for a certain group of fans.
Bryce Weiler is our guest. You can find him out on Twitter at Bryce Weiler. That's Weiler. He is here on behalf not just of the Orioles and his work here, but also with BeautifulLives.org. And Bryce, I want to give you a little oxygen to talk about this because I'm so impressed. I got on here to look around at ways to get involved, and I saw the chairman wrote a letter that you got involved with him, and you're about 30 years old now, sort of in that range. And I want to get back to the background of how you got involved in all of this and really becoming an inspiration that not only the Angeles family wrapped around with the Orioles, but all the work you're doing, not just in Baltimore and Illinois, but really nationally through and internationally through BeautifulLives.org.
I got involved with the Beautiful Lives Project by contacting the owner of the New Britain Bees baseball team, Anthony Icavone. I told Anthony how when I was in college, the former University of Evansville Aces men's basketball coach, Marty Simmons, gave me the opportunity to sit on his Evansville basketball bench, and how being able to experience sports and shooting free throws before the games and just being a part of a college basketball team had changed my life, and how I wanted to be able to give these same opportunities to people of all disabilities to be able to live their dreams in sports, but in a plethora of other categories across the country. And we do programs where people of all disabilities can experience music, can perform with a cheerleading or a dance team, can take part in going to a zoo and other nature programs such as that, can do art, painting, and sculpture, can learn how to sing, can play musical instruments, just a whole number of categories. So any type of a dream somebody has, we want to make that happen. I have many great chapter presidents across the country in places such as Dallas, San Diego, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Hartford, Connecticut. I do not have any Baltimore chapter presidents, which is a shame because I know so many people of all disabilities in the Baltimore
there's the
area.
shout out. There you go. We're yelling at anybody who wants to be the chapter president. Let's go, right?
Who would love to do events, and I just don't have time to set them up. I can definitely help a chapter president do that. I can help them with fundraising, help them to help find people to invest in smiles. So if there's anybody in the Baltimore area who'd want to be a chapter president or want to hang out with me the next time I come to Baltimore to do a fantastic event over at Camden Yards, they could call me, email me, or text me if they would like. My email is Bryce at BeautifulLives.org, BRYCE at BeautifulLives.org. My phone number is 812-899-5673, 812-899-5673. Hopefully some of your listeners will be as fantastic as you've been, Nestor, and they will reach out to me.
Bryce Weiler is our guest. You can follow him on Twitter. You can find him out at BeautifulLives.org. And I guess, Bryce, I don't know if I'm going to find you at Camden Yards this year, next year, somewhere down the line where we are with baseball at this point. But what do you miss the most about sports? I would say we're 100 days into this. I'm not a golf guy. My wife did have it on this weekend. I'm not a NASCAR guy. I think it's nice they've banned the Confederate flag, but that's not making me watch it. I'm a baseball, football, hockey, basketball guy. It's sort of all been taken away here for a little while. Certainly we all will appreciate it a whole lot more when it comes back, right?
I really miss doing all the programs to help fans with all disabilities to live their dreams, whether it's there in Baltimore at Camden Yards, at Ed Smith Stadium in Sarasota, Florida, or the events we do across the country with the Beautiful Lives Project to help people with all disabilities to be able to play on the field with baseball teams, play on the field with softball teams, shoot some nice three-pointers and free throws and make some swishes on a basketball court, throwing some footballs back and forth on a football field, or even kicking the soccer ball around. Those are the events and programs I miss most in sports that allow others to live their dreams and take part in life-changing experiences that they may not have otherwise been able to participate in.
Bryce, for you, best thing you've experienced, give me like the number one thing or favorite player or somebody like Adam Jones was super cool to you, or I don't know, I'm just making that up, but give me the number one story, the number one experience you've had.
The Braille jersey game was probably at the top 2 years ago, being able to experience that. We had 150 fans who were visually impaired or blind at that game, and I put all the food menus into Braille for them by where they were sitting so they could read what there was to eat or drink. And then last year, having two home games where fans of all disabilities were able to play on the field with the plush, soft as carpet grass turf there at Camden Yards, and be able to live their dreams playing with Baltimore's players. My friend Tim Cossins, who's the Orioles catching coach, came out for the second event and stood there by first base with me while individuals were running past. So just being able to share in that with my friends.
September 18th, 2018. You can go back and check it out. There's some really neat pictures of the Braille jerseys to remind everyone of all of our friends. 40th anniversary of the NFB moving their national headquarters right here to Baltimore. So National Federation of the Blind, based right about a mile from where I live. If you've driven through the tunnel anywhere into the city, you've passed it many times. Bryce, it's been nice to get to know you. I appreciate the email. I appreciate the reach. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the good spirit for the Orioles and good work that they're doing. I'd love to promote more of that sort of thing, and certainly would love to just get a beer and a hot dog and go to a ball game, right? Bryce, I appreciate you, man. Stay well out there in Illinois. We're going to send folks out to follow you at Bryce Weiler, as well as on your website at BeautifulLives.org. Be well, my friend, okay?
Thank you so much, Nestor. Hopefully we can meet each other soon in person in Baltimore.
You got it. Bryce Weiler joining us from Claremont, Illinois, which is just south of Terre Haute, just east of St. Louis, just north of Evansville, out in the friendly heart of the Midwest, as we used to say, near Indianapolis. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I will not always have funny hair and a funny hat, but I do right now. Big appreciation to all of our friends. Raskin Global doing the investments here. And, of course, Leonard Raskin joining us, trying to make some sense of the world and your money here at WNST on a daily basis. You need to invest. You need somebody you can trust. Call our friend Leonard Raskin, Raskin Global. Also, our friends at Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. The new Chicken Palooza shirts are coming in, I think, next week, from what I understand, from Shelby. Also, doing some good work for Living Classrooms Foundation with our friends at Rofo, real fresh, real fast, and the coffee. I haven't been buying as much gas over there. Tell Ed Stronsky if you see him. Planet Fitness reopening this week. We're going to hear from Victor Brick and our friends there. Teddy's going to join us next week as well. Planet Fitness getting open, staying safe. We're going to learn a little bit about what they're doing to stay safe. Longtime sponsor here, as well as our friends at Taharka Ice Cream. I finished off the Caramel Crunch. That is the salted caramel ice cream with chocolate-covered honeycomb toffee. Yes, it's too good to be true. This is how good it was. It's gone. So Taharka, I love reading off of this because it's kind of inspiring what they write on the side of their cartons. At Taharka, we use our award-winning ice cream to serve up social change. Each scoop inspires cultural understanding, community engagement, economic empowerment, and, of course, good times. Our social enterprise is managed and operated primarily by young adults who are bringing change to our beloved city. That's Baltimore. That's here. Ice cream has always inspired people to come together, so we take ours to the intersections of cultural divides to do just that. Taharka is an authentic ice cream. Only Baltimore brings you Taharka. But luckily, everyone can enjoy it. There it is. Taharka, made in Baltimore, enjoyed by me and my wife. So much so that we need some honey graham. Send in recon. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Taos in Baltimore. Staying calm when we have ice cream from Taharka. Local, which means we're eating ice cream from Taharka. And Baltimore positive.